Hello, everybody, and welcome to the latest Table Ready live stream. I'm Harry from Fog of War, and this guy over this side is
Adam from Dice of War.
And down here, we've got some special guests. How about you guys introduce yourselves?
I'm Wayne from Battlefront. I was one of the writers in the Battlefront team.
And I'm Chris. I help out on a lot of stuff too. Also from Battlefront.
All right. Well, thank you guys for joining us. We are here, weirdly enough, to talk about NATO Forces for Team Yankee. So that's the next big release. Yeah, that one there, which I've only ever seen in electronic form so far. So it's nice to actually see a real one.
Ironically, these are the only two that we've seen as well.
In the office.
Yeah.
The rest
I do understand we're so early in the cycle so far that, yeah, the books haven't actually come in yet for you guys. You've got a couple of, I assume they're pre-release copies or whatever.
They're fresh from the printer. It's just that Australia, like New Zealand, is unfortunately at the bottom of the world. Sometimes things take time to get here.
It does take a while for stuff to get here. So I'd like to say welcome to everyone who is watching live. We do have quite a few people either live or people who are saying they'll catch us on the reruns, which is great. So we've talked about who you guys are. So what are your particular roles? I mean, Wayne, you wrote this particular source book, is that correct? Or did the research?
Yeah, I mean, I sort of came up with the army list, sort of things like that, and then there's a few people who helped us out. I mean, Adam helps out sometimes, a bit of writing and things, so we do. So not all the writing is me, but I sort of come up with the structure of the book and do all the kind of the game-related stuff for it, and I do a bit of writing as well. But I also there's a team of people who help out. Yeah. Right.
So I assume it's a big research project because I mean, history is my thing. That's my into the hobby, is that I'm very interested in the history of the period and the vehicles and all of that. So I'm guessing that there's a huge research thing about just exactly what was Hero Structure 3 in the 1980s for the Germans and that sort of stuff. I imagine there's a great deal of research that goes into that.
Yeah, that's because it's a lot of that stuff's not exactly. I mean, in recent years, more of it's become available. But when we first started Team Yankee, some stuff was a bit wishy-washy about what information you could find. I mean, one of the hard things is establishing the capabilities of modern tanks and how much armor they actually have, because a lot of that stuff is quite secret. So you're kind of relying on people's third parties' best guesses and sort of an estimate and sort of thing. So I mean, there's quite a bit, and sometimes it comes down to you kind of you get a feel for what how much armor does this thing actually have? Is it, and you look at what you've done for similar generation tanks and what people expect them to be protected from and all that sort of thing. So
you can't have a tank with 25 front armor that only weighs 7 tons. It just doesn't work.
It doesn't. But funnily enough, people are a little bit reticent about discussing current.
I know. I remember seeing an article a while ago where somebody who worked, I can't remember where it was, but they got in trouble on one of the World of Tanks forums for letting, or might have been War Thunder.
War Thunder. It was
War Thunder. Yeah.
And one of the guys released classified information to win an argument about the weak. I think it was a weak spot on like a laser rangefinder or something on the front of the Crusader 2 or something. He was saying, no, it's definitely this much, and it's like all this stuff is like classified. No, don't.
Whoops. Bit of a whoopsie. So let's actually talk a little bit about what NATO Forces covers. So I'll get you guys to describe it for yourselves, but just it is taking the Free Nations lists and bringing them up to be up to date with the extended timeline for Team Yankee, because Team Yankee has, from its original release, there's been a whole round of source books for most of the nations that have brought it a little bit forward, brought in new gear, and the free nations needed a bit of love. So, how would you characterize what's coming in this particular release?
Well, it's all the nations that first appeared in Free Nations are in there, but they've all had something added, gives them a bit more, and we've also added the Belgians as well. So there's another nation in there. So we've kind of fleshed out the kind of the European front, with the last kind of missing NATO nation for that kind of German front area.
Yeah, so it is Canada, France, Holland, the ANZACs. I have to keep not saying Australians because it's not just Australians. And New Zealanders get very unhappy if they get left off. And now the Belgians. And the Belgians are a lot of fun. I do actually want to talk a bit about them in a minute, because I think that would be an interesting force to play, and they've got some fun. I was looking at some of the lists going, I don't know I'd play a tank list, but there's some other things in there that I'd really give a go. So we might have a talk about that. But what are the highlights for you guys? What do you look at with this particular release and go, that's really interesting. I can't wait to see that on the table and see how that's going to start making a difference to the game.
I don't know. Because we go through the kind of playtesting process. So we've seen a few games with these forces now anyway. But you always want to see how people tackle the heavier tanks. How if they get run. Because there's always an issue of there's a bit of a kind of debate amongst people who run tournaments for Team Yankee about how many points you should have a tournament. Because a lot, we always say 100 points because that's how the game's designed. That's what we're aiming at. But a lot of people are running things like 85-point tournaments and things like that. So that doesn't lend itself to taking the big stuff. So that tends to people complain. There's the kind of the BMP hordes and the kind of light tank or T-55s and Leopard 1s and that. But that's because that's the sort of forces you can fit into those smaller points values. So, it's kind of a self-fulfilling prophecy, really. But I think...
we started with 32.
Yeah, I always look forward to seeing what people like about the new stuff. What things are people go for. And often we're quite surprised what people will find interesting, what other people will not.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to the fact that I've painted so much stuff already in preparation for this. I already have a French army, which I've literally played one game with. So that's 2 squadrons of AMX-10 RCs, a full infantry company. And so with the new book, I've added the Leclercs, added mortars, the VAB T20s. I've got to add a whole lot of things, like literally already painted. And I've painted 1 platoon. I need to paint about 4 more of the new VBLs.
Right.
And I'm actually
they look nice.
Humvee spam VBL course being a bit of fun. Likewise, I've got a Canadian army as well, which I love, which I played a lot of games with. And I finally get to use Leopard 2s with maple leaves on them. So that's a little thing for me. And the infantry just got better. So I went to a tournament 5 years ago, and at the end of the tournament, I wrote out an infantry army list and said, this is what I'm going to paint next. And I never got around to doing it, obviously, because I needed to paint another 20 M113s. And now with the book, I'm now more excited to do it. I've started painting the infantry for it. It's a lot of cool stuff.
Yeah, all right. Let's have a look at some slides. Adam,
I was just going to say about how we've added the man-pack stuff to the NATO forces. What was the sort of driver for that to add the mortar teams for the infantry?
Just because, when you start getting down to some of these smaller nations, they just don't have the availability of self-propelled artillery. So having the mortars in there gives those infantry forces some decent barrage, some artillery fire that they can use in the game. So and we hadn't had gun teams in Team Yankee, but they were easy to deal with because the actual normal mortars, the 80mm mortars, are normally normally infantry teams anyway, so they were easy to deal with. And we just took the step of making the heavy mortars, the 120s, just make those infantry teams. You give them the heavy weapons rule, and they pretty much perform like a gun team in Flames of War anyway. So
yeah. Sorry, I was just looking to see if we had any of the mortars on any of the slides, but we don't.
Those new French ones, I can't wait to get my hands on those.
French ones, and the Dutch get some 120mm mortars as well, don't they?
Yeah. It's the same mortar model, so it's they're both the French heavy.
Okay, cool.
Yeah.
Are they metal? Delicious metal models?
Yes. Yeah, they're metal. Yeah, the metal with metal crew, I think. Yeah. I've painted a battery of Dutch ones up.
Yep.
Oh, nice.
All right, so let's talk a little bit about what is coming. So the source book is coming, and everybody knows about that. Now, the release date for that is sometime in very early October, isn't it?
Ooh, don't ask.
Oh, okay. Well, I shall very confidently say then, as far as I know, it's very early October is the Wave 1 release.
Yeah, I think mine would be a better idea than us.
Yeah, fair enough. I just didn't know if I'm allowed to blurb actual dates or anything like that. So as far as I know, there's 3 waves coming. Wave 1 is in early October. Wave 2 is in late October. And then there's another one in November.
Yeah.
I assume they're organised by nations, are they?
More or less,
yeah.
Yeah, so as far as I know, Wave 1 is the ANZACs, the Dutch, and the Belgians. So there are actually 3 nations that get sorted out very, very early on. And then there's the Canadians and then the French.
Yeah.
So we're seeing some stuff on there. So I'm really excited for what the Canadians have coming. Chris, you were saying you've got a Canadian army. Can you see yourself taking Cougars and Grizzlies, the wheeled transports?
These ones are mine.
Those ones are yours. Okay.
He just carries them around with him everywhere.
Yeah.
No, we needed some painted, and I think it's largely my Canadians in the book anyway, on the previous book. So I painted them up. So yeah, I've already got my Grizzlies painted. Sorry, I keep getting between the Grizzly, the Cougar, the Bison, which we don't have because that's a engineering vehicle.
That's the APC.
The Husky.
And the Husky. I get them all mixed up. But no, I definitely want to have which one is it? A Cougar squadron. So I've got one platoon painted, and I've got a platoon of Coyotes, the Lavs, painted. But I need to paint up some more of the Cougars, mainly because I have bad memories of Scorpions rolling up to my Leopard 1s, shooting them at close range and watching them blow up. So I thought being able to do that to someone else would be fun.
Fair enough.
They're cheap and cheerful as well. So 100%. Cougar Squadron with some infantry is on my list.
Yep. So the Cougars are the 6-wheel with the Scorpion turret.
Yeah.
So if I remember correctly, this is Canadian Home Forces. So the Canadians are interesting because as well as their armies in Europe in the Team Yankee timeline, Red Dawn actually now gives us Canadians fighting at home, which is where the Grizzlies and the Cougars are for.
Originally, the Red Dawn was going to have these particular Canadians in there. We were going to put the Airborne Regiment and the Cougars and the Grizzlies in the Red Dawn book, but then we decided we'll save them up until we got to the redoing the NATO book.
Because that's another one that's going to be very popular. I think the Canadian Airborne. So the Canadians actually do get what is it? The Mobile Force Command. Units.
Yeah. So
I've got a slide for those guys on here. Yeah. I do. Look at that.
The Iltises look very cool.
Yes.
As such, so basically, yeah, if anybody doesn't know an Iltis, it's basically a Volkswagen license built in Canada as basically a Jeep. So this is the airborne company, I believe, for the Canadian Forces.
Yep.
So you now get airborne platoons, so you can actually take heli-borne Canadian infantry, and their fire support is the little Jeeps that we can see there, the Iltis, both recce platoons and tow missile arms.
I ran out of painting steam. Otherwise, I would have. I wanted to do this force because it didn't require a lot of painting, I guess. I needed to paint my 2nd Infantry platoon and just paint a few extra stands so I could swap in and swap out the right weapons teams. But by the time I'd finished doing everything else, along with the French stuff I'd been doing, I hit the wall a little bit. But it's still on my to-do list just because I actually would like to do some Hueys. That's the actual reason I want to do it.
Fair enough. But I must imagine with all the new toys coming out and having access to everything that comes out, it must be very hard to focus on something long enough to get a force completed and painted before there's something else shiny and new that comes along.
I have eyes that are bigger than my stomach, and I have gaming desires bigger than my paintbrush or whatever you'd say. You end up with a backlog, and I'll never die. That's the important thing.
Yeah, that's it.
Yeah, nobody's allowed to die until they've painted built their stash. So one thing that people might have noticed I've seen some in the comments. So there's the 50 caliber HMG platoon and the 81mm mortar platoon. So there is actually an airborne weapons group blister, I believe, coming out for the forces for this, that has all of those all together in a single blister, which actually looked like a lot of fun for the Canadians.
Yeah, I think the Canadian infantry range in general is very nice. It's our kind of NATO range
because it covers the Canadians and the Dutch and the Belgians. Anybody with an FN, basically in a European uniform style thing.
You get a unit of mortars, 50 cals, and you get some extra 30 cals because the airborne platoons just
And it looks like it'll work out to be a reasonably cheap sort of force, like that you can add on to your other force. Because you're probably only looking at a couple points or so per patrol.
A great Leopard 2 delivery device.
Yes. So how do you guys feel about the Iltises, both the recce patrol and the anti-tank section, I believe, come in pairs? How's that going to work with morale? Because I know when you're list building, you look at something with 2 vehicles in it and you go, it's going to run away.
I suppose. I mean, it's running away after it's lost 1. So they're not like they're not an armed vehicle, so you don't have that issue where you've got 1 bailed and 1 alive, and then you still got to take the test. They're either dead or alive, so there's either 2 functioning or 1 functioning. So
I think from my personal experience with the Canadians, I found that I wasn't winning 8-1 anyway, because people would find 1 or 2 platoons between the M113 tow platoons, your mortars, or whatever. Someone's got to knock away a few platoons. And I think the smaller size units for the recce patrols, it means you can't be, I guess, throwing them in front of something and just assuming they'll stand up to a weight of fire. They are a recce patrol after all.
It is an open top Jeep with either a gun or a tow missile launcher on it. Fair enough.
2 points for a pair of tow launchers in a Jeep. Find a nice forest for them. They'll never move out of it.
No, you definitely need some cover.
But and also, they're Jeeps, so they're 7 or 4+. So you actually find that they're actually probably more survivable than you think. Where something that would punch through a tank, you just go, oh well, 4+, I'm good.
Not the way I roll dice, they're not. All right, so I've just flipped back here to the actual Canadian Force slide that we've got. So a lot of this stuff would be familiar up the top. So the Leopard C1s, and the mechanized companies. But as you guys mentioned, they get the Leopard 2s, so you get the cool Leopard 2 armored squadrons. But yeah, if we look down at the Force Mobile Command stuff, that's where we get the Grizzly mech and the Cougar armored squadron. So you can actually take the Cougars as a reconnaissance force on their own. Yeah.
Yeah, you can pack quite a lot of them into a squadron.
Yeah, absolutely. That would be an interesting force to see on the table. A whole ton of those things supported by some Grizzly infantry.
Yeah, it's definitely on my painting list.
Absolutely.
When Ryan's finished with this box from the assembly guides, it might not go back to Ryan, if you know what I mean.
I think I know what you mean. All right, let's see what's on the next slide. What do we got here? France.
The French.
Yes, the French. And we've already mentioned the little VBLs. There's that's that little light vehicle there in case anybody isn't familiar with that.
What's the weapon that the guy in the BBL in the centre's got?
Is that AWST?
Yeah, it might be.
What was it? Sorry, you guys just cut out for a smidgen there.
Oh.
Sorry, the weapon that the VBL in the middle has. So you got is that an AWST? What's that?
Yes.
Yeah, that's the AWST.
Right.
Yeah. So AWST on the right and Eric's on the left.
Right. Okay.
Yeah. There's also a version that has a Milan mounted on the back as well.
Oh, sweet.
So with the Erics, French forces and a number of other forces in this release get access to the Erics missile. Do I remember that the French actually classify that as a traumatic munition, that people are only allowed in their service career to fire it so many times?
Oh, God.
I assume that goes out of the window come wartime when, there's actual tanks there, but apparently firing it is an exciting experience.
I did talk to one of our Canadian playtesters who had some experience with the Erics in the Canadian Army, and he was saying it was an interesting weapon. They said one of the things he said about it was the wire, because it's wire guided.
Right.
The wire on it was quite fine, and if it wasn't great in urban environments because it would get tangled easily, and if there was any bushes or trees between you and the target, it could often get tangled on those and break. You'd lose the control of it, sort of things. Yeah, which was kind of interesting. Yeah,
I understand that's why Australia actually took Milan out of service too, because in our terrain, the wires used to snag on stuff all the time. Yeah, because it's very scrubby.
Yeah. I suppose with modern weapons these days, they just go up and come down. You don't have to worry about the stuff in between.
Yeah. No, we've got lots of landscape that we have to shoot around. So, is there going to be a pronunciation guide for Leclerc?
Yeah.
Do we need one of those? I tried one online, but it didn't work very well. And in fact, there have been people in the comments here debating that you definitely don't say the last C, and but we couldn't figure out if it's like Leclerc or Leclerc or whatever.
Oh yeah, well yeah. I suppose it's. I'm not sure what the difference between Le and La. I suppose it Le is only LE and La is LA, but yeah.
I thought my French is... in a previous stream years ago, I'm sure someone told us that it was Leclerc, but I did see a nice meme with an L and a chocolate eclair.
That was me. I made that. That was me. Lots of English people said, "Oh, that sounds great," and lots of French people said, "No, that's not how you say it." Given that the French people are actually usually quite fluent in French, I was actually willing to take their feedback on that one. Right. But yeah, definitely we're getting information that the second C is silent. Yeah, fair enough. So what do you guys think the Leclerc is going to bring to the French? Because
just awesomeness.
Yeah.
Well, it's got two things going because it's obviously quite well armored, but it also has the 120mm gun, which they didn't have access to before. So it gives them a bit more, direct fire anti-tank punch in their forces. I mean, I assume most people will probably run a platoon of them or something as support or part of a mechanized company or an infantry company or something. Yeah,
because they're not cheap.
No, that's mainly because of the armor. Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's hard to beat 22, isn't
it?
Yeah. It is a big change up for the. It is a big change up for the French, though, isn't it? Because you go from the AMX-30 with a reasonable gun, not amazing armor, but if I remember correctly, the fire control wasn't that sophisticated, and I don't believe that even the gun was particularly seriously stabilized. So you go from that to something like the Leclerc, which has more fruit.
It's got all the bells and whistles. It kind of it benefits from being kind of the last of that generation of tanks to be made before. Yeah.
I mean, we've talked here so many times now about sort of the concept of big games for big boys. So playing 150, 200-point games where I take my Czechoslovakian force that is full of T-55s and I leave it at home, and instead, you bring units of Leopard 2s, 2A5s, you bring the Leclercs, you bring M1A1 HCs, and play challenges. Play a game where you can put a couple of platoons of these on the table and not have to worry about a 4-hour game with a bunch of spammy tanks, but actually play some heavy armor. So I think for the people that want to do that, it's going to be great. For me, I've painted 4 so far, and I do see them as being a great support option with my infantry. I've got a VAB company, so 2 full units of VAB infantry, Milans, mortars, a few toys, and some of those. Add in some AA, you get to 100 points quite quickly. I think it's good. Like Wayne says, I think you see a lot of support. See it coming as a lot of support options, but I feel like I should have painted 5, not 4, because then I could at least run a company once I paint some AMX-30s.
Right.
Mistake on my part, so I'll just have to settle for 4 for now.
So my regular opponent plays East Germans, and we were doing East Germans versus my Australians, which was reasonable peer-to-peer. But then we did his East Germans versus a challenger force with the British. And we did it as a demo game for a local hobby store. And I put down my 3 challengers and a couple of warriors, and he filled the other side of the 6-foot table with a line of T-55s and BTR-60s and what have you. And the guys watching the game are going, "Where's the rest of your force?" It's like, no, this is it. This is all I've got. So they were a little horrified to actually see that play out on the table.
Yeah, he needs some allied T-80s or something just as a support.
Yeah, because the T-72Ms that he had weren't cutting it. So, yeah.
Well, you can take East Germans can take T-72B as well now, I think.
They can now. Yeah, that was pre that. But yeah.
So that gives them something to throw some points at if they really want to.
So what do we got? Belgium. Let's talk a bit about Belgium. What do you guys think Belgium brings to Team Yankee? I know it's rounding out the NATO roster of nations, but it's going to be an interesting force to try and play. How do you guys feel about this one?
Yeah, I mean, they've got elements of some of the other nations kind of mixed into them, sort of thing. They've got reasonably sizable mechanized infantry platoons, which can basically they can have a infantry fighting vehicle as opposed to just a boring old APC if they want to. They have basically a British style recon company, which is kind of interesting in itself because of the British equipment. And then, of course, their tanks are just Leopard 1, so they're kind of very similar to the Germans and the Dutch as far as the Leopard 1 sort of things go. I
was having a look.
Eclectic army. This is the one for you.
Yeah, absolutely. So it will be very much, I think, like playing some of the new Nordic Forces nations, won't it? It's still Leopard 1s.
Yes.
Yeah, they didn't.
Like
Didn't seem to, there wasn't any. They didn't seem to be looking at getting a bigger tank. I mean, their reserve tanks of all things were like still M47s or something. They had still storage and stuff during the 80s. So yeah. So and I'm not. And I think they were like one of the nations, like the Dutch, that after the Cold War, just their army downsized substantially. Yeah. So, yeah.
But the reconnaissance squadron that you mentioned, the one that's Scimitars, Scorpions, and Spartans, will be an interesting force, I think, because it's the same as the British medium recce squadron. You get a lot of stuff. I think I was looking at it. You get like 24 or 25 vehicles for about that many points, including striker guided weapons troops. So you get the AT-23 swing fire missile, which people always forget about until it starts blowing up in their face.
It is kind of their organisation. It looks like they kind of went on exercise with the British and went, "Oh, we like that. We'll have that, please."
We'll have those. Now, there was actually a question that somebody's posted in the comments asking about the Leclerc and whether it's a resin or plastic kit. So it is actually a beautiful plastic kit, isn't it?
Yes, plastic. Yep.
Is there one in here? No. No, I expect you'll see some pictures of the frames up on Instagram over the coming weeks and on the website.
Right.
But yes, it is a lovely little new plastic.
I think I think that's the only new plastic in this book, is it? Or was there something else we did?
No.
There's a lot of reuse of existing plastics.
Yeah, a lot of existing.
Yeah.
As we talk about the Scorpions and Scimitars, etc. For the Belgium, M113s all over the place, Leopard 1s and Leopard 2s all over the place.
Yeah, so we might just, because I've got some new releases here, let's talk a little bit about that. So the plastic kit is the Leclerc for the French, and there's a new...
So that big box, that's all plastic, so all that,
Yeah, so that's the starter box. Now, that is going to be a limited edition, isn't it? That's not going to be a long-term...
No, it's sort of... We struggled a little bit with the NATO books because we don't have quite the range of plastics. We don't have plastic infantry for them yet. So these ones are just ones to get you started and a cheap way to buy some of these bits if you don't have a French army yet.
Yeah.
Or in my case, actually, I could use everything in that box quite happily since I haven't done artillery or AMX-30. So
yeah. So if we just very quickly look at that, so you get a couple of Leclerc, you get... is that an AMX-10P down the back? Probably as an observation post.
Yeah, that's your observer.
Yeah, some F1 artillery and some AMX-30s. So I'm guessing an actual company of Leclerc would be pretty expensive. So I'm guessing, as you were saying, Chris, you'll be mixing in a troop of those or a platoon of those with AMX-30s.
Yeah, well, because that makes a quite point-heavy force. Must be close to 100 points. I actually wrote what's in there, but it slips my mind how many points it is. But it must be very close to 100 straight off the bat.
All right.
No, you got 3 plus you've got minimum strength AMX-30s, the AMX AUF 1, which can also be built with AMX-30s. So if you already had artillery, the AMX-30 builds both. And then your Gazelles, which, gosh, you need Gazelles in a French force. They're so fantastic.
Yeah. Well, they get the gunslinger rule, don't they? So they're able to, they can fire their 20mm cannon before the AA happens.
If you're going to put any aircraft in your force, 4 Gazelles with 20mm seems like a cheap and no-brainer addition as well.
Yeah. So I'd have to say helicopters have been hit and miss for me. I've taken helicopters with my British force and they turn up, they get shot down by all the Soviet AA. They occasionally fire a missile at somebody. I wouldn't be convinced, but no, as you say, for the French force, that's probably a reasonably useful thing to have.
Yeah, I have 12 Gazelles tucked in a box at home because I thought, once again, if I run the infantry of the AMXs, they're a reasonably cheap component. And I thought I may as well just double down. If I'm going to put helicopters in the force, I won't put 4 in or 2.
Yeah.
I'll go with the 2 units with HOTS, 1 with 20mm cannons, and possibly the Mirages, and just work on the theory that I've actually got a lot of boots on the ground, but all my heavy firepower is coming from the flying assets. And I figure I could overwhelm someone's AA, especially if they just turn up with a pair of Gophers or something.
Yeah. But that would have to be the way to do it. You'd have to turn up with enough helicopters to make somebody's life exciting.
Yes.
Yeah. So I'm trying to keep an eye on the comments because we had people asking for plastic VABs. I think that's probably not on the agenda just at the moment.
No, our plastic schedule this year was ridiculously tight.
It's been pretty punishing.
Yes.
You guys have bought a lot of stuff out this year.
Yes. Yeah, poor Tim that does the majority of them has had a very busy year. It's
Well, I'm a big fan of Tim's work. Tim does good work.
Yeah, he's fantastic. We love his work.
Yeah. So what else have we got on there? So those are the Cougars we can see, and a couple of Grizzlies. So they're resin and metal.
Yes.
Yeah.
So Evan sculpted both of those, and you can also have the Coyote, which is the American Lav. So that's obviously plastic. So if you want to go down a plastic reconnaissance route, you can take that option.
Yeah, you can go the Coyote route. Fair enough.
With the VAB T20 for the French, with that turret on the top, is that metal?
That one?
Yeah. Is that well, it'd have to be if it's a resin.
Yeah. It's a completely it's a modified VAB hull and a small.
Oh, okay. So you actually can only get them in that box.
Yeah. The good thing is though, the way that Wayne's done it is if you've already got your VAB squadron painted or your VAB
the add-ons
painted, you can buy a box of those. That will give you 2 that you can plug into each unit, and then you take the 4 VABs that you've already got painted, and you go and use them as the transports for your 120mm mortars that you're going to buy as well. So if you buy those and the 120s, it actually works out perfectly.
Yeah. Nice.
Great.
I may have noodled that out once or twice.
So
the one who works out the box contents and stuff normally.
Yeah.
Fair enough. Right. So that is another one of the French ones that's coming, the VAB T20 fire support section. And I reviewed the Feldwagen the other week. So there is now a trend for things like the G-Wagen and the Iltis and the VBL to actually be turning up in Team Yankee at the moment. So there's a lot of that very interesting lighter stuff that you can get.
I really like what Wayne did with the VBLs and the AMX-10 RCs. So I've got an AMX-10 RC company, which in Free Nations was very, I don't know what's the word, I'm going to say linear. It was an HQ, an AMX-10 RC platoon, an AMX-10 RC platoon, and I think an AMX-10 RC platoon or an infantry platoon, or maybe an AMX-30 platoon. I can't quite remember.
Yeah. So I made a few. I got some more information, made a few changes to that formation because when I originally did it, I was aware that there were also recon patrols, but they were just jeeps with like machine guns. And we decided not to put those in, and that's why we gave the AMX-10 RCs a spearhead as well as scout. So in this version of it, we've taken away the spearhead and have given that to the actual recce patrols and the VBLs. So they do the spearheading, and then the AMX-10s are doing their actual job as fire support.
The USTD sort of units where they've got the M10s and the little scout platoons.
Yeah.
So it has the double benefit, I guess. It makes the formation a lot more resilient now because you've got the extra platoons to add in there. And I think it just adds a bit of coolness, a bit of flavour. And those peeps are just super cool. So Yeah.
Yeah, they look awesome.
And of course, you can run them as a squadron of themselves, the VBL.
Yes.
Yeah, that's the divisional. Basically, the divisional recon is the other one. Squadron de Tirage, I think it is.
So Ben's asking if you're going to bring out the UAZ 469 for the Soviets now, since we're doing all of that.
Oh, because we need more spam.
Yeah, that's what we need. Absolutely.
Well, Wayne and I do have some thoughts. He's the one that does the thinking mainly, but there are some options for some Soviet stuff we'd love to do if time and schedules and all the other stuff gave us that opportunity. So yeah.
So how many VBLs are there in a pack? Sorry, I'm just grabbing a few of the questions
from the
from
page to check. 4.
4, right? Okay.
Yeah, four of the new ones, but you meant the old one.
Yeah, so because your units are either, sorry, I've hit middle age. Depending on how you're running them, they're normally 3s, but you need ones for your HQs, and that's how you also get the extras for your Milan unit and stuff like that.
Yeah.
2s or 3s. Sorry.
Now, I didn't put any slides in for these because there wasn't like a big difference in how they worked. But we should mention the Australians or the ANZACs and the Dutch. Shall we do the Dutch first?
Yep. Yeah, they're next in the book.
Yep.
So the main changes are we introduced a Leopard 2A5 squadron, which is of course the model released with the West Germans. We also, the Dutch got Apaches at some point, so we gave them some Apaches, so they can have their own Apaches as attack helicopters instead of the German BO-105s. And I think that's the main change. And we added the mortar. The heavy mortar, since we're making it for the French anyway, we gave it to the Dutch as well because they also ran that. So technically, the Dutch actually had that rather than the M106. So when we did the original book, we just gave them the M106 because we wanted to give them some mortar fire support, and we weren't going to put a ground mount mortar in at that point. So, So I thought
that is an interesting point, that you guys have to make decisions when you're looking at this, that we can't introduce a model to do exactly what is for that particular force at the time. But now you're coming back and being able to do that. Because I saw somebody say online the other day, they never put the 120 mils in the mortar tracks or whatever. So there is a choice that you guys are having to make about what can we simulate in this force to give them a reasonable approximation with the stuff that we have available.
And
there's always a balancing act. So you've got a balance between what Wayne might want to put in a book because what's historically available or whatever, what people like myself come along and get excited about and try and force him to shoehorn them into the book. Then what the management team are prepared to sign off on, because at the end of the day, Wayne has to give a proposal to the owners and the senior sales guys saying, this is what we're planning on putting in the book. These are what releases might be. I have to do some work around how many things, how everything would get packed. And they'll look over that and go, that's too much, or, that's not enough, or, this isn't going to, we don't think this is going to sell. So then Wayne might come back and review it, change things, add, remove, or say, well, we can make this a little more interesting because they did these things. And it's a real balancing act. And then at the end of that, we have to try and figure out, can we actually design it, hand it over to the factory, and send it out in time? Because there's no point adding something in here that we can't make.
Yes, fair enough. And I mean, there have been a lot of releases between Flames of War and Team Yankee this year. A lot of stuff has come out.
Yes.
As a reviewer, I've got a pile of stuff that I just haven't been able to get to, that I've paid money for. It is sitting in a pile somewhere waiting to be reviewed. That it's just like there isn't enough hours in the day.
Yeah, I remember 10 years ago now, the studio was quite a bit larger then, and we were talking about how it would be a nice project to paint what was back then a 1,500 point force for every book as they came out, and there were 4 books a year, 3 books in a compilation or 4 books or whatever, and you could, if you were very industrious, keep up. I obviously never kept up. This year, the last between the Big Four project and some of the Team Yankee stuff, we've tried and just have failed. I think I painted heavily over Christmas and New Year's, working on NATO stuff and my Canadians for World War II, the Ram Squadron and some other stuff. And I've sort of gone on hiatus for about 5 months. I painted so much stuff that I just needed a break.
Yeah, because I was doing the Germans for the Big Four, and so I was trying to do something from each book. I did a bunch of things for the Bulge German book, but I just haven't had a chance to do anything for the Berlin German book at all yet. So
yeah, and when you're so such a magpie, and I mean, I genuinely get excited about something in every book. Ironically, the page I'm currently sitting in front of is the Verkennings Squadron, the
reconnaissance squadron.
Yeah, which I'd never looked at before about 3 months ago. And I remember having a read of it, looking at the little, what's this M113C and V?
M113C and V, yeah.
They're such cool little vehicles.
I got a heap of those, man.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. Wayne and I were playing a game, and I was looking at his vehicles and going, well, these are cool. How many can I have? Oh, that's great. Yeah, that'd be great. Oh, yeah, it's greener. Yeah. And I went straight down a rabbit hole. Yeah. And then I had to hit the stop button before I ended up doing anything. Because the squadron was cool. But I just, Yeah,
because that's what I have for my Dutch, is I've got a mechanized infantry company and a reconnaissance squadron, and that's what I normally run for my Dutch. Yeah.
And I was looking at that the other day, and Chris, I agree with you. If I was going to do a Dutch force, that'd be what I'd start with. All those little M113C and Vs, some infantry, because you get tanks in with that. You can take Leopard 2s organically in with it, so you've got some tanks to come along. That's a great little force.
Yeah, it's kind of got the sort of German/American style reconnaissance organization where you get the tanks mixed in with the reconnaissance vehicles.
No, I thought it was pretty cool.
Yeah. Are the Dutch the heavy hitters for this particular book? Because they've got the Leopard 2 A5s, the cool little reconnaissance squadron, Apache helicopters.
Yeah, I mean they were pretty good anyway. I thought they were a well balanced list to start with, but having the A5s, because now with my mechanized guys, I might consider running a platoon of A5s instead of the Leopard 2s I used to have. So, I mean, I'm gonna have to make some changes because it's not going to fit in the same points anymore. But it just gives you a bit more bang for your buck. It's also a lot harder.
I mean, I would say that Wayne's already admitted he has a Dutch force. So
fair enough. So you think there might have been a thumb on the scale there on the?
I couldn't possibly say, but I'm sure Wayne completely above board.
I also have West Germans. They've
got MLRSs too now. So.
Yes.
Okay, so Droxlet's saying, do we have the army charts for Dutch and ANZACs? No, I didn't actually put them in as slides. And because, I mean, for the Dutch, the big ad was the Leopard 2 A5s. With the Australians, it's the LAV Trials Squadron. So if we just briefly have a chat about the Australians. So I field Australians, so I'll just put my hand up at the moment that I do have a dog in this particular race. I really like what's happened with the Australians on here. I've had to, when I've been writing stuff for it, wind myself back a little bit about how good I think that is. But it is a little bit ahistorical in that we get some M1A1s, but the narrative in the book has them coming in as least replacements to replace losses in the fighting. So you can't have loads of them, but you do actually get access to a heavy tank of your own if you want. And the LAV Trials Squadron is the same thing. The losses to the cavalry meant that they used LAVs.
It seemed like with having the LAV as a plastic model, it seems like a good opportunity to include something for the Australians, even though it should be the 90s or whenever they actually start fielding. But having them thinking about it at that point and trying it out, it didn't seem like such a bad idea in actual kind of live war. So
Oh, and I was just thinking about it. No tigers. So was there a thought of actually adding the Tiger helicopter to the French, so then we could actually grab them and use
Well,
them as training?
helicopters are always a big decision because they're more expensive to make as a model than a tank,
Yeah.
and then
And you
you've
buy
got
less of them.
you could have kind of justify how many you're gonna sell. I think,
And they have to be plastic, I guess. Oh, they don't have to be, but yeah.
For ignoring the transport helicopters that we've done as part of Red Dawn, which are effectively something that sits on the table. The rule is, helicopters have to be plastic. It's they're heavy models on a flight stand if they're resin. Doesn't take much for them to fall over, for bad things to happen, and we just want people to have a good experience with them. We would love there to be more helicopters, but unfortunately, that sort of commercial hat sometimes goes on, and you have to make the right decisions.
I always add an aircraft option for each nation when I do them, but often they fall off because you're not going to have a model for it. So they usually get some sort of allied aircraft instead that at least does the approximation. If someone wants to model them as something else and just use the stats from the allied aircraft, that's fine.
My Canadians have F-18s. So, and I dread to think how much it cost between finding a nice F-18 kit, finding Canadian decals. It would have been much simpler just to use something else, but
I went tornadoes or something.
I went down a rabbit hole and that's that. And I just use them at tornadoes or whatever.
Well, what's the one?
You can use them as A-10s.
So one of the other comments we've got here is, are we going to get a proper step-by-step guide for painting OzCam on armor?
Well, I'm sure we do have something on the website currently, which reminds me, I owe someone on Facebook a message, but that's another issue. The Australian OzCam, the labs and the M1s in the book actually aren't Battlefronts. We borrowed them from someone who'd actually painted up the army themselves, and we're planning on using them as using the American list. So we know this guy from way back, and we just sort of sent him a note saying, "Hey, can we borrow your army?" No particular reason, just doing some photos. But it's definitely on the list. That a good guide would be a nice idea.
Yeah. So there are some paint call-outs in the book, aren't there? Yeah.
Well, I did the Norwegians for the Nordic Forces book, so I should do a painting guide on that camouflage scheme because that was painful.
Writing a note, Wayne to do painting.
Yeah, those Nordic splinter cam would be harder to do because it's all hard edged.
I was cutting out masking tape templates for each color.
Oh, somebody's asking for F-111s for Australians, please.
Would love them.
There is a Chinese company that makes plastic model kits in the correct scale. If anybody feels like,
I'm 99% sure, very off topic, that a third party does make a nice F-111. They've gone out of business, and another company has bought that company. So you may actually see them come back.
It's a bit like the what are the not the dragons? What's the Swedish plane? The
Viggens.
The Viggens.
We were
going to use there was a plastic kit available from a third party, and we were going to use that, but it was such a terrible kit. We just got in because the model was so. It was. I put one together. I put one together, and none of the bits you glued on the bottom lined up with each other. And there was massive gaps everywhere. It would have been
because you have licensed aircraft kits from other manufacturers on a few occasions, but it's very much dependent on whether there's a decent kit to license. Because I know, like Academy make an F-16, but you'd be better off carving your own out of soap. To be honest,
Viggen was kind of like that. Yes.
It's kind of like somebody described to him what an F-16 vaguely looked like at one point, and he kind of did it without having seen a real one. Oh dear. So that has been an overview of NATO forces. Have I missed anything?
I believe you've missed the Scorpion Armoured Squadron.
You missed the New Zealand.
Okay. I'm very sorry about that. Actually, what I did miss is New Zealand Skyhawks for Australia.
Oh, yes. Well, it's because we had a Skyhawk model already, so that was the even option there.
Yes, but actually, to go back to what somebody said in one of the comments, somebody mentioned Decals. The Decal sheet coming out for NATO Forces is beautiful. So if you're an Australian who has been dealing with whatever Australian decals you've been able to get for your forces, hooray! You'll be really looking forward to the decal pack. So there's all the cool Canadians, there's the French, but there's stuff for your New Zealand Skyhawks, the little red kangaroos to stick on the side of your APCs. That's actually, I'm very excited about that one, as you might notice.
Well, you could always paint the Skyhawks up as Aussie Navy ones, couldn't you?
Yes, mine are. Sorry.
Well, talking about the Skyhawks, how the hell are they flying with that much gear? Have you seen what they've got on?
What is it? Bombs, rockets, Maverick missiles,
and guns.
Well, when this
they're
book
flying really low.
When this book set, Evan was actually working on Skyhawks in the Air Force, so he had a vested interest in making sure.
Oh, sure, yeah. I'm not complaining. I'll probably be running it, but yeah.
Oh dear. Oh, there's lots of people shouting that they want to see the decal sheets now in the comments.
There's probably a picture in the back of the book, is there?
Yeah, the catalogs.
I have to buy the book to see the decal sheet. So
they'll be up on pre-order on the website soon, but there is a lot in there. There's always stuff that you would like to pack onto these in addition. So like everything, there's always some constraints, but it is a big improvement in terms of the offering over what we had previously.
So probably should mention also in the back of the book there's a little bonus.
Oh yes.
The missiles.
Yeah, over time we've added things like Milan 2 and we added Dragon 2 into this book with the Dutch. So we thought it was a bit unfair that the Americans don't get Dragon 2. So we've put a couple of pages in the back of the book that allow you for Americans to take Dragon 2, for Hot 2 to be taken by the West Germans, and for Milan 2 to be taken by the West Germans and the British.
Yeah.
Okay, so for everybody who was asking about decal sheets, I think I've managed to get that up on the screen. Can you guys see that? Yeah. It's blurry as heck, but there it is.
Yep.
There's a lot of stuff in there.
Yeah. So I think we got a bit of guidance from some friends across the ditch. We got a little bit confused as to what was period correct and not. Any mistakes are ours, obviously, not the people that helped us along the way, but yes.
Yeah, fair enough. Let's get rid of that. Go back to being us. There we go.
Is there a bunch of bridge weights and things in there as well, or did we?
I don't remember now. I'm sorry.
Because probably a few things on the West German decal sheets that also can be used for the Dutch and the Belgians and things as well.
I'll have to zoom and enhance by looking. Oh, there we go. Yes.
Yeah.
Oh, that's use West Germans for.
Yeah.
Could I use the old section zoom?
Oh right. Yes. So the markings guide, as you were saying, for some of that stuff. Again, I was looking for that, and I can find a decent M113 guide for Australian buckets for 1967.
Yeah,
but 1985 can be a little bit different, and
we hope that we've just done it justice, and that the people that know more than us will accept that, and the people that know less than us are just happy they've got something that's a lot nicer.
Yeah. So that's a fair number.
Yeah.
Well, I was doing some research for World War II decals recently for the British, and I've got periods in D-Day where the Cromwell has got 3 different bridging numbers.
Yeah.
And it's just like, come on, guys, like, pick one. How hard is it?
Make up your mind. How heavy is it?
Yeah, the manual says it's something, but then the manual also says that bridge weights are put here and divisional squadron flashes are here. And then you say, but this picture clearly in Europe says something different. So,
Absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah, I've seen different bridge weights on all sorts of vehicles. That you look at someone's book who says they're this, and then you go look at the pictures, and that's got a different number on it.
Yeah.
My French VABs, more to help me, on the back doors of every VAB, I've got early war French decals. So I've got playing card symbols on the left-hand door to help me tell the platoons, or squadrons, sorry, and then the right-hand side has a number. So I can go, that's the company commander's one, that's platoon 1, that's platoon 2, that's Mephisto platoon 1, that's Mephisto platoon 2. And are they accurate? No. But I suspect that should it have been needed, someone would have come up with an idea, and this is as good as anything. Plus, it was a nice nod to the early war stuff as well.
Yeah. So, got a comment here. Was the 2 MRVs fixed for the Aussies? That was something that I had meant to mention.
We did,
that's all been fixed for the cavalry squadrons for the Australians, hasn't it?
Around. Yeah. I think Gary Waite sent me a bunch of information about that. I think.
Yep. That wouldn't surprise me in the slightest.
One of our play testers from Aussie.
Yeah. Yeah. So
there's lots of options in that unit now. You can have 3 and 2, or 2 and 2, or 4 and 1, or 3 and 1, or just 4 LRVs, or 3 LRVs.
Yeah.
Whatever you want.
That's actually something I researched way back, and it was a case of it was variable depending on what was kind of operational at the time. So what Australians actually tooled around with in terms of LRVs and MRV mixes was very much dependent on what was available. But having the option to have the 2 MRVs would be nice. I have the problem now that I only actually painted one of them completely. So I've now got to go and match the paint job so that it looks at least moderately similar to be able to take the full thing. So we're at the 1 hour mark. We probably need to start wrapping this up because you're real people and have jobs to go to and all those sorts of things. We're happy to sit here and chat to you for ages, but what are your closing thoughts on this? How do you see NATO forces fitting into the greater Team Yankee thing once it was all rolled out? Are we going to see a lot more French?
Yeah, I think so. I think the French. I mean, some people might argue that French probably should be like the others and have their own book by themselves.
Yeah.
But
that
would be mainly French people, wouldn't it?
But they're in here, and it's good that they're available. And I think there's so many cool options for French. I think the others have all got something new and interesting to make them kind of people maybe get them out and refresh them, or if they're not been playing with them. And of course, the Belgians will tick a box for a certain type of people.
Yeah. But it's looking through the release, there is something for every force in there. None of them have been ignored. No. So, as I say, I didn't put in the forces diagrams for the Dutch and the Australians, but that doesn't mean that they haven't been tweaked and updated and that they're not exciting. It was just it wasn't visual on the diagram.
Yeah.
I think, weirdly, speaking for myself, Free Nations was one of my favorite books way back when. I mean, I painted a lot of figures for it when we first did it. So coming back to it again, I'm really excited about. It did give me an excuse to paint some stuff and re-pull out, because I have that box of M113s to finish off my Canadian infantry.
Yeah,
I want to do the mortars, I want to do the 2nd Infantry Platoon, all that stuff. It did make me pull that out and look at it again. Even just the Nordic, the Norwegian NM135, which the Canadians get to use.
Yes.
Even just slotting that in, that's a new model that we've made. So now we just got to slot it into this book as well.
142.
142, sorry. Yeah.
So that's the TUA, the toe under armor.
Yeah. So even as Wayne said, even the the lists that aren't new, there's still something to look and say, cool, I'll field my 120 mil mortars with the Dutch. Like you just had to pay mortars, the MLRS, and the Leopard 2A5.
Leopard 2A5.
Yeah.
I'll probably do some Apaches at some point. Yes.
So that's not a lot of painting to then be excited about the army again, to bring it off, and to find that it will play quite differently than how it did 6 months ago. And that is something that genuinely gets me excited. Yeah.
When I did the Nordic forces, I looked at the quick reaction force for the NATO, and they had the British Marines and the Dutch Marines. Is there thoughts of maybe doing like a online or a community kind of list for like British commandos or Dutch commandos, that sort of thing?
Not at the moment, but that sort of idea has been floated around as maybe even a concept for a book at some point.
Yeah, or like Soviet naval infantry as well.
Soviet naval infantry. You've got French paratroopers, French Foreign Legion paratroopers. As you say, Royal Marine Commandos, that sort of thing.
Throw in Red Storm Rising and the assault on Iceland. We just need a large,
some Icelandic policemen.
And one.
So maybe that's an idea for a book. You guys need an irregular and special forces type book to bring both the Soviet naval infantry and British commandos and all of that sort of stuff in as a single book. You heard it here first, everybody.
We've got a bunch of other ideas floating around for further Team Yankee content. None of it's been kind of finalised. Me and Chris were talking about different ideas for different things. So now it's with our managers, our bosses now, to have a think about and decide what they want us to do, go forward with. So
Droxlet says Icelandic forces literally printing money there.
Well, Iceland didn't have an army at all, did they? I think in the 80s. I don't even know if they have one now. I think it was civil defence type stuff. I think
Drop Yokel an email and
Iceland police force.
You've got to defend the beat.
So the question here is: will existing formations on the forces website be updated to the modified formations?
Yeah.
So I would be surprised if they weren't.
Yeah. Greg sent me some questions the other day, so I assume he's doing it now.
Excellent.
Quick extra question from me. Adding extra nations maybe down the track. What's the thoughts of something like Spain or Italy or?
Yeah, a couple of people have mentioned Italy.
Yeah, that was when I pitched the NATO book and the Nordic Forces book. I did say another option was we could do a Southern Europe book, which would be things like Spain and Italy and possibly Austria, and Yugoslavia, something like that. Kind of all that that front. I mean, the Spanish troops would probably end up just reinforcing the French troops in Germany, or unless they get directed to help the Italians. But I mean, they'd only been in NATO since '82, so they're kind of the new boys on the block or whatever it was. So
so I've also got a question here: do the Belgians get the Cannon and Jagdpanzer? And the answer is, yes, they do.
Yeah.
There's also a ton of people screaming for the AT numbers for the new missiles. But we can't spoil everything.
They're higher.
Yes.
They're definitely higher.
They're all lower.
We were asked to steer clear of things like Italy for Flames of War and Pacific and stuff like that. And I know people have been screaming in the comments, and I've been pointedly ignoring them, so I'm not allowed to ask for that. But when that discussion was happening, it was they are already working on stuff for Pete's Christmas message. So just everybody who wants to know about that stuff, that's being worked on now. So the people I've been speaking to at Battlefront have been saying, we're working on that. Pete's very keen to come on and say too much about a whole bunch of things that he's not supposed to talk about. So that stuff is coming, but they kind of asked us to keep that for Pete, because he does want to touch on and talk about that.
Yeah, he
absolutely.
did. What was he did an interview recently on another.
Yeah, with the Restless Kaiser.
Yeah, that's
Yeah.
right.
He
I
already
watched
spoiled. He already spoiled too much
Mm.
on that.
Yeah.
Absolutely. That's the Kaiser is very good at that.
Yes. No, I mean, Wayne is the resident fan of the Italian theatre. So there's our passions run deep. Our passions run deep. I've got a medium-sized Pacific American force based around LVTs and the Amtraks and stuff. But yeah, like everything will come. It's just a case of when.
Yeah. In recent times, we've had focus on certain things, and then some things have been shuffled in releases, and so the focus changes, and I start working on something else and put that aside for a bit, and so I think there's a few things going to be firming up in the next couple of months, and then we'll be prepared for where we're going in the future.
And no doubt Pete will tell too much in the Christmas.
So he'll have
absolutely
we'll have to be nailed down by Christmas time, and then Pete will tell everybody about it.
So the Christmas thing has become a real tradition now, and it is like it's a much loved and much anticipated thing to get Pete in front of a camera and get him to just say way too much. What we need to do is everybody needs to send Pete lots of free alcohol so that we can liquor him up before he gets in front of the camera, so we can get the most out of him. So you heard it here. Send your alcohol.
I love watching the interviews where Wayne and Chris are next to Pete, and Pete's saying something, and you watch him go. We want to talk about that.
Yeah, the important thing, as long as we don't say it, it's fine. You can say whatever you want, but
Oh dear. All right,
so
well, guys,
on the plan.
Thank you very, very much for coming on. I know we haven't answered everybody's questions because there's been tons of people who want specifics of armor for Leclerc and the AT values for the new missiles and stuff. All of that will be coming. We can't spoil it all up front, and I'd get in trouble if I tried. But we will give you as much of this information over the next few weeks as we're coming up.
I know I've written some spotlight text. I'll give them to Ryan, so I don't know if he's put it up yet, but that's got some of that detail in it.
Yeah, it'll start rolling out over the coming weeks as well.
Yeah.
So
Great. And I'm working on a bunch of videos looking at particular wave releases and different forces that are coming out. So that information is going to come, but we can't do it all today. All right. Well, thank you very much for joining us. Anybody got any last comments before we go?
Yes, I have. Sorry. Just want to shout out. I went to the Australian Armour and Artillery Museum in Cairns.
That's
recently.
very fun.
It was awesome. Everyone should go. But if you have a look on the Flames of War website, I think in July next year, they're going to be running a Team Yankee Flames of War. What are they calling it? The Asia Pacific Green Championship there. So any New Zealand, Australian, or other international war games, if you want an awesome place to have a tournament, you should go there. Any spoilers, Chris, on what Flames of War is? Late war, early war, mid war?
For the event.
For the event.
I think from memory, it's late war for presumably late war, say 100 points, presumably Team Yankee 100 points as well. There is going to be some stuff, touch wood, assuming nothing goes wrong, some cool stuff for the people that are entering that come along. The owner, Curtis, he's talking about chipping in some once in a lifetime things for some of the winners.
So the winner gets to ride the Panther. Is that what you're saying? Is that what you're telling me?
No, they get to take it home.
If you can pack a Tiger in your carry-on, you can take it home.
Well, apparently they've got a whole bunch of Grant tanks that they found on somebody's farm. So, you might get one of them to take home.
Yeah, I think there was seven of them or something. I was just or six.
With trees growing through them.
They got four. They got four. Yeah, they got four in the museum, and I think they got another one, which I was lucky. They took me around the back, and I saw them.
Aussies had a heap of Lee Grants, didn't they? But they never sent them to New Guinea or anything because they decided to go with first with the Stuarts and then with the Matildas. Yeah,
Yeah, they
Matildas,
just
yeah.
drove around the desert and
yeah, did training. Yeah.
But yeah, that should be a massive event. We're working with AetherWorks in Australia, who's our distributor, to help organise that. Not everything is planned. The time, the place, that's sorted. It's now the next parts that we need to figure out. I'm hoping that the intent is there will be some staff there from New Zealand. I don't care about the others. Hopefully I get sent.
I'll put a good word in for you, Chris.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I just want to see some big tanks.
Oh, it's awesome. Yeah.
All right.
Plane, probably.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, thanks everybody for coming along. Thank you
Thank
to
you.
Wayne and Chris for joining us and for answering a lot of the questions, or as many of the questions as we could, from all the people who tuned in. We have had a really good big audience for this, which has been very, very nice. And it is great that people can come on and actually talk to you guys and get answers to their questions. What's in plastic? What's in resin?
Yep.
What's the AT for this? When's the Pacific happening? So that is fantastic. Thank you very much for the opportunity. And I think we'll probably leave it there. So good night, everybody.
Thanks, guys.
See you next time.